Hello, I'm a woman in my 30s. Isn't there a saying that unhappiness starts the moment one compares with others? In that sense, my life was a continuation of unhappiness from the very beginning. As for me, I was the subject of comparison from the moment I was born into this world. That was my fraternal twin sister who was born first by 2 minutes earlier than me. Except that we were born on the same day from the same womb, we have no resemblance whatsoever. My older sister was born inheriting all the best DNA from her parents. On the other hand, I was born with barely scraping the leftover DNA. Since anyone could see the clear difference, my sister monopolized the love of our parents, of course. She's pretty, acts with charms, and even studies well, so why wouldn't she? In contrast, I was scrawny and tall with plain looks, a blunt personality, but on top of it all, I was a poor student. The bigger gap between our lives as sisters became more pronounced right after we entered college. My sister was accepted at an Ivy League college, while I was admitted to a vocational college majoring in cosmetology. The difference in our levels was plain for anyone. When my sister was accepted to an Ivy League college, my mother went around acting triumphantly, as if she was the final victor in the game of life. She especially acted that way around my paternal grandma, who gave her a hard time for having only 2 daughters at every chance she got, whining for grandsons, and my dad's sisters, who were no less abusive to my mom. All of you should take notice. You all had looked down on me for not bearing a son all this time, right? But see, my daughter whom you ignored because she's a girl has been accepted at the best university in the country. I was not sure how she thought, but it certainly felt like that. How happy she must have been. How avenged she must have felt. It wasn't that I didn't empathize with mom's feelings, but truthfully, I was somewhat hurt. Even though I was not as good as my sister, who entered a prestigious university, I was also admitted to a college with superior grades. But my mom was too unfair for not saying a word to congratulate me. Moreover, my mom did not tell any of her friends about my college admission. If anyone asked about me, she quickly changed the subject to talk about my sister. She acted as if she feared her glory earned from my sister would be tarnished because of me, who was admitted to an unknown college in some boondocks. Was it because of that pain? I studied hard as if my life depended on it. Throughout 2 years, I had maintained being the top in my major, and owing to that, my professor recommended me to work at a famous hair salon, and I was able to start working as a staff. It was one of the top salons that famous celebrities frequented. Accordingly, its hair designer salaries were much higher than the employees of large corporations. However, the situation for the lowly staff was different. The work was hard and the pay was meager, the same as any local small salons. Despite that, learning skills directly under the famous hair designers by watching them definitely offered merit. It was something that I couldn't buy with money. While working as a staff, I was always the first to come to work and stay the latest. Even though no one forced me to do it, I felt I needed to give my best efforts to succeed. Although I could not go to a prestigious university, I didn't want to be the second in my chosen field to anyone else. Thus, hard efforts were essential. When I clocked in at work, the first thing I did was cleaning up, then organized the products to be used that day ready. Then, all day long, I worked assisting the hairstylists, serving customers, shampooing, washing, and cleaning. You could say that I did all the mundane routines common to hair salons that were inconspicuous. Among those, what bothered me the most was working by standing up all day. Lowly staff members could not rest by sitting. No rules existed against sitting, but I honestly didn't have the time to take any break. I had to rush around in circles to be barely in sync with the hair designer's work. By the time the day ended, my feet would be swollen, so that I couldn't get my feet into the shoes. So, 365 days a year, I had to wear sneakers. In particular, because my supervising designer was very strict, I had to go through a more difficult training session than my coworkers. The first month was so tough that I thought about quitting practically every day. But I couldn't because I was desperate about this work. 3 years had passed as such. During that time, under a strict teacher, I cried a lot from being scolded so much. But it was also very rewarding. Among my coworkers, I was the first to be promoted from being a trainee. The day I was promoted to a hair designer, my first client was none other than my supervisor, who was the best hair designer in the salon. His request was simple. He wanted me to cut his hair that would suit his style. People say that the worst customer is someone you know, so his order was just like a customer walking into a restaurant and asking to serve any food. Still, strangely, I didn't hold a grudge against my supervisor who made such a tall order against me. On the contrary, I was so grateful that I lumped up, overwhelmed with emotions. I knew why he came to the salon on his day off, just for the sake of his trainee, to cheer up his disciple, who was a new and unknown hair designer. So, I decided to take the occasion to brighten up my supervisor's atmosphere based on my observation of him all this time. His hair was snipped off at the tip of my scissors onto the floor, and it was finally over. I trimmed the back of his head and looked at him in the mirror. First, I felt relieved as the cut was styled as I had planned. However, it was his opinion that mattered. My supervisor turned his head lightly side by side, closely examining the details of the cuts. How I was trembling in that short time. I thought people could hear my heart pounding. That was when my boss smiled, looking pleased, and said, "It's good. I really like it. From now on, I will let you cut my hair, Lisa." I couldn't believe what I heard. At that moment, I burst into tears. I was so happy and wanted to smile, but tears kept flowing endlessly. For the first time since I was born, I have felt as if I was being valued for being myself, from none other than my teacher. Besides, it was the first time I saw him ever smile. He was infamous for being coined as the Ice Prince in the shop, to the extent that he was just as charismatic as any top celebrities. I was thrilled at the fact that such a teacher looked at me and smiled, making my heart flutter. The teacher who overwhelmed me became my current husband. As the teacher said, I had been put in charge of his hair for the rest of my life. Shortly after I was promoted to a designer, we developed into a couple. After 3 years, we vowed to get married. We decided to meet each other's parents to obtain their approval. From the beginning of our relationship, I had already been friendly with his younger brother, like my own, and met his parents a few times, so I didn't worry about getting their blessings. They were very nice to me thus far, so I believed that they would approve me, and they did. However, it was the opposite with my family. My parents started to pick on my husband's job. They were ashamed of his job as a hairdresser for a man to be. No matter how much I explained that the times had changed, they wouldn't hear of it. How does it make sense when their own daughter is in the same profession and be critical of their future son-in-law's job? I couldn't understand them at all. Even though they were my parents, their unreasonableness was pathetic. I also felt so bad for my husband. I was welcomed and treated well by my husband's parents, yet my husband was being slammed out at the doorsteps that I felt so embarrassed I couldn't even raise my head. However, my husband did not show any displeasure, but continued to visit our house despite the cold treatments. He sincerely tried his best to please my parents steadfastly. He was better to them than I was, their own daughter. Eventually, thanks to my husband's efforts, my parents finally approved our marriage. We decided to get a house nearby my parents' place. It was one of the conditions my mother had placed in exchange for her approval. My parents-in-law and my husband said that it was because my mother loved me so much, but I knew that wasn't it. Ever since I was a child, I knew my mom wasn't the type to worry or care about me. My mom's motive was due to my husband, her son-in-law. She planned to use my husband for doing her hair free of charge, or putting him to work when she had some difficult chores around the house, or driving her around like a chauffeur for her. My mom just needed a son-in-law like a slave to use without paying. In truth, I became angry, but I decided to put up with it because my husband said that he was happy to act like a son for his in-laws, who did not have any sons. I thought it would be okay if I just loved him more, even if he didn't get enough love from my parents. I thought that my parents would come around when they come to know my husband's true worth. Not too long after we got married, we resigned from the hair salon where we worked and opened a shop nearby our house. As it was small and lacked publicity, we faced financial difficulties, but we were confident of our skills. We had losses for about 2 months, but after a close celebrity client of my husband visited our salon, she helped to spread by word of mouth. We became a famous shop despite its off location, where getting appointments were difficult even though we had numerous stylists. It was the success earned after 3 years. I thought we only needed to walk on the flower path when something unexpected blew up on our face. My mother began differential treatment against my husband when my older sister got married. My sister got married 2 years after me. My brother-in-law is British and is an exchange professor at the university where my sister teaches. My mother just adored and worshipped my brother-in-law, who was a foreigner and a professor. She catered to him in all kinds of ways, fussing over buying all kinds of herbs every season to help him stay healthy and make specialty gourmet cuisine to please his every palate. That wasn't all. Whenever she went, she would brag that her son-in-law was a professor. Anyone who saw her would think he was my mother's son. I could concede that her acting in such a way is understandable. However, she shouldn't be discriminating against my husband over something to eat. My anger was piling up when my husband suddenly stopped preparing to open up our salon and ran out saying he needed to rush out to my parents' house. It seemed that my mother had called him again. It was the day when our shop was packed with appointments. Since he was leaving because of my parents, I couldn't say more and anxiously was waiting for my husband to return, looking at the clock. It had been already 3 hours, yet he didn't come back. He didn't answer my calls, so I had no choice but to cancel all his appointments, apologizing profusely. I wanted to call my mom and yell at her, but I suppressed it for the time being. I decided to go to my parents' house when my husband returned, totally exhausted. He was completely covered in dust. "Honey, what's wrong with you? What have you been doing that you look like that?" My husband said he didn't even have any energy to answer and laid down on the sofa. He asked me to order him any food since he hadn't eaten anything yet. Instantly, I felt furious. "Didn't my mom give you any food all this time? What the hell has she been up to?" When I heard the story that he painted the storage room on my dad's behalf, who had back pain, I was stunned. If she had enslaved him that much, the least she could do was to feed him. How could she send him without providing him any food in this incredible heat? But do you know what got to me even more? Shortly after my husband came back, my sister posted a photo on her social media. It was a photo of my sister and her husband sitting around my parents' dining room table, eating the roasted prime ribs. It was a picture of chummy atmosphere. Hashtag mom's prime rib roast. Hashtag mother-in-law's love is son-in-law. The photos even had such hashtags. I couldn't believe that if they were eating the prime ribs, why didn't they feed my husband the same? How could they not even offer to eat with my husband and only shove their fat mouths by themselves? I came outside to call my mom. I was going to give it to her once and for all on this day. "Mom, how can a person be like you? You have the mind to feed the prime rib to your professor's son-in-law, yet you have no heart to feed your younger son-in-law?" He's not like your older son-in-law who's just visiting. My husband went to work for Dad all day. Even the slaves are fed to put them to work. Yet, how could you treat your son-in-law like that? If you put him to work since early morning, you should have fed him before he left. I don't even expect you to treat my husband the same way as you do to Amelia's husband, but at least you should have treated him like a human being. Then, my mom simply said, "Why are you complaining after doing merely just a little work like that? I didn't want to hold him too long, so I sent him early. Yet, did he already tattletale on you?" Those who haven't been educated show their ignorance just like him. And you too. Why do you make a big fuss over a roast? If you want to eat it that much, there's the restaurant right next door to you. Why do you get all hung over a mere pot of roast? And that goes the same for your husband. If he wanted to eat some, all he had to do was to ask. He didn't say a word here and just left. Did he come to you to complain about it? You two are a pair, really. Mom, how could you say that? Do you only give food to him if he asks for it? He shouldn't have to ask for food. You should have offered. He said nothing to me when he returned. I found out because your precious daughter put up the pictures on her social media, so I found out. Never mind. What could I say to you, Mom? But you should remember one thing. Everything is a give and take. After I hung up on her, I was still very upset. I couldn't hold down the anger and frustration. My husband was married into our family before my brother-in-law. Yet, to date, my mom never cooked for my husband, let alone prime ribs. How embarrassing to say that the mothers-in-law loves their sons-in-law. She was abusive and used my husband like her servant. I felt so sorry for my husband. I could endure my mom's preferential treatment of my sister against me. All I have to do is look the other way. However, I couldn't stand it when she also treated my husband the way she used to treat me. So, I made a firm decision. If I continue my relationship in this way, my husband and I would continue to be hurt. So, I decided to refuse from my side those people in the name of the family who had always hurt us. From that day on, I stopped going to my parents' house. I blocked all the calls to my husband from my mom. Then one day, my mom called me at the shop. All of a sudden, she spoke gently, inviting my husband and me over to her house during the weekend. I wondered what got into her and learned that it was her birthday. I was going to ignore it, but my husband, who was listening to my phone conversation, insisted that we couldn't ignore her, and I was forced to go to my parents' house. I didn't know what got into her, but for a change, she came out and met us at the front gate. In contrast, she acted coolly toward my brother-in-law. Somehow, it seemed volatile. It seemed there was something I didn't know about. My mom catered to my husband at every turn, making me feel uneasy throughout the dinner. She even put the food morsels on my husband's fork, calling him my son-in-law, my son, as if she was singing. At that point, she became scary even. I felt she was up to some scheme. Indeed, it was no wonder that my mom was acting so strangely. Not too long ago, my brother-in-law's parents had come from England, and his mother disapproved of my older sister. I guess her displeasure showed all over her face. I learned that my sister had been mistreated and even racially discriminated by her mother-in-law. My mom did not know about that until she witnessed it accidentally. My mom became furious and complained to my brother-in-law about it. However, he acted as if he didn't understand Spanish, when other times he spoke so fluently. My mom certainly got stabbed in her back. She insisted that my sister get a divorce. However, my sister protested against her, saying that she earned her professorship owing it to her husband, and refused to get a divorce. Why do you think I'm living like this? It's all because of having an ignored mom and dad like you, who have no money. My colleagues who are less qualified even get the full tenure because they have wealthy parents. With me, I only have my husband whom I can rely on. So how could I get divorced? I will not. Not over my dead body. As my mom was up against such situation, she was making a big show by catering to my husband for a change. It wasn't even very funny. Why did they use my husband in the middle rather than solve their problems themselves? I felt so uncomfortable that I didn't know how I got through dinner. After the uneasy dinner, the time came to give birthday gifts. My brother-in-law took out a small jewelry box from his jacket to give to my mom. She looked happy about it. However, when she opened the box, there was only a hairpin. Just at a glance, I could tell that it was a cheap one that's sold by the street vendors. At that moment, my mom's face got distorted fiercely. My brother-in-law bought such a cheap hairpin, yet he was making a big deal out of it. He said that he went around the market over 10 times to look for one that suited my mom just right. It wasn't surprising. I don't know whether it's the difference in culture, but my brother-in-law always brought humble presents. Because of the past incidents, my mom had expected something more from him, so our disappointed mom couldn't control her angry facial expressions at my brother-in-law's behavior. My husband, who was watching the situation, tapped me. He was hinting me to give mom the present quickly to make her feel better. I took out an envelope of money from my handbag and pushed it toward her. When mom saw the money envelope, her face brightened. Saying that it's the etiquette to open the envelope right away, she looked into it when her eyes widened in surprise. In it was a $10,000 gift certificate for a luxury cruise. My mom was so happy that she couldn't stop smiling. "Oh my, Mom, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I took out the wrong envelope. That's the one for my mother-in-law. This is yours since you prefer cash. So I put it in cash. Is that okay?" I snatched the envelope from my mom's hand and gave her the envelope that had a $100 bill. My mom, who heard the word cash, looking very expectant, saw the money in the envelope, then frowned. "What's this? It's only mere $100? You give your mother-in-law a $10,000 cruise ticket and I get only $100? Are you playing games with me? How could you call yourself a daughter?" She seemed hurt and even got teary-eyed. "Mom, why are you acting like that for a mere little thing like this? I have been treated worse by you for over 30 years. Why? Now that the table is turned, are you sad and angry? Then, why did you treat me like that? You're not a stranger but my own mother, but why did you act like that to me? You shouldn't be hurt for a lousy little thing like this when you nailed so many hurtful things in my heart. Did you say merely 100? To earn that money, do you know how I stand all day? It's the money that I earned after being treated so badly to give to you. Didn't I tell you before? All relationship is a give and take. Do you know how well my mother-in-law treats me? On my birthday, she bought me a massage machine because I stand all day working and sent me food, worrying that I might skip meals, and drops by now and then to fill up my refrigerator with all kinds of home-cooked meals. Do you think that's all? During the holidays, she wants me to rest, so she purposely goes on a trip with her friends. She loves me dearly, unlike you, a difference like a sky and the ground. Have you ever thought of me first? You don't, because all you think about is Amelia. So, from now on, I plan to do exactly as I have received from you. From now on, don't ever call out my husband. He's very expensive. He's not someone that you can call at any time to put to work at your whim. If you need a driver, call a chauffeur. And if you need to fix things around the house, call a handyman. Don't you dare to treat my husband like your servant. I took my husband's hand and left my parents' house. My husband insisted that we go in to apologize to my mom, but I refused flatly. My parents, who are abusive to my husband and me, are not needed by me either. Shortly after, my sister eventually got separated from her husband. He suddenly went back to England. He said that he couldn't live with my sister any longer. In the end, my sister, who was my mother's adulation, became despair overnight. My husband and I are busy these days. The only different thing is that my stomach is becoming more pronounced as I became pregnant. People say you can understand your parents once you become a parent yourself. However, I wonder, would I understand my mom's behavior just because I became a mother by having a baby? Would I get to find out why she mistreated me? I don't think so. Perhaps someday I may come to forgive my mother. However, it's not that time yet. Right now, I just want to concentrate on people who love me and care for me, like my husband, who's asleep next to me, and my baby who's in my womb. Thank you for listening to my story. I sincerely hope you and your family will have a very happy day. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day.